Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session. I'm Susan Berishaj. I'm really excited to be here, and I want to welcome you all and invite you to let us know where you're connecting from. So I am connecting from the East Coast in the U.S. I know we have an audience from all over the world. So, a brief introduction of myself for those of you who don't know me. I am the founder of Sia Admissions. It's a boutique consulting firm based in New York City. And I work with young, ambitious applicants who are targeting the likes of M7s, top 10, top 20 business schools, and really need help with the storytelling component. So let's dive right in. So I do want to talk a little bit about the scope of kind of how I put this presentation together, how I was thinking about the 6-week period in helping you maximize it. But as far as the presentation, as far as the 6 weeks period of time, I made a few assumptions, which I just want to make sure that I highlight at the beginning. So the assumption is that you have already selected your school. You already know which school you're applying to. If you don't know the school, well, of course, that there's time to evaluate and research that needs to be added to the 6-week plan. I've also made the assumption that you haven't written any materials. If you have done materials, you already have a head start, which is amazing. And then also, if you, the assumption is that you have already completed the GMAT or the GRE and have a score in hand that you're satisfied with, that you're not retaking again. Adding this to your 6-week plan is, of course, going to take away time from the application. So if you are at the stage where you are working towards a retake or sitting for the first time, means that you need to carve out time for the test in addition to the plan that I will be sharing with you. And then this is a very aggressive timeline. Typically, you want more time than this to apply, but of course, we all have different reasons and different experiences that shape the decisions that we make. And keep in mind that you typically need more time than this, but for the 6-week plan, we're going to kind of carve out as to where you should be by different points in that 6-week period. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of the elements of the application. First, to apply to business school, to be successful in business school, you do need a goal. And that is the foundation piece that carves out everything else in the application. So goals is an important part of the application process. Then you have the letters of recommendation. Typically you require 2, although some schools, I saw someone said that they're applying to CBS, they require 1, which makes it slightly easier, although sometimes you have a hard time figuring out who you're going to choose. Then we have the target school research. So you need to understand what the school offers. And then we have, of course, the essays. Every school varies as far as how many essays they have and what's the length. So we have schools like INSEAD that have a lot of different questions, or HBS that only has 1 question, but it's 900 words of writing. So it really depends a little bit here on kind of how many questions the school is asking as far as the essays are concerned. When you have a resume, that is an MBA resume. The application portal, short answer questions. So oftentimes applicants neglect to consider that the application portal does have additional questions that they require responding to that takes time. So these questions can be anywhere between 50 characters to 200, 300 words. And sometimes you even don't have any word limitations. For example, Berkeley Haas's job description in the employment section. So you really have a sort of a carte blanche to write what you want without any limitation on length. So if you leave this for last minute, it may add a lot more stress. So you want to definitely add this to your plan to make sure that by the time the deadline comes around, you have a you have thought about all the pieces. And then, of course, the final review of the entire application, which is, you definitely want to make sure that you do some editing afterwards as well. So let's dive into the 6-week plan. So I have a countdown, excuse me, time frame to lift off, which is to the deadline. And I will be looking at essentially where you need to be at the different weeks in the 6 weeks period of time. And I'll talk a little bit about each one of them. So the first thing is, as I mentioned earlier, goals are the foundation. You need, in the first kind of week and a half or so, you are going to be working on your goals. And goals means you have to have a long-term plan. What's that North Star that's guiding you to pursue an MBA program? What do you want an impact to make? What do you see in the world that you really need to, that you want to contribute to the change of it, to making it better? So that's your long-term plan. And then you need a short-term plan as to what is that next step immediately post the degree. What is that job that you're going to have, and what is the industry you're going to be in, as well as what are some of the employers you're interested to work at. So this is definitely going to require some research, and it really sets the foundation for everything else, which is the reason why this is the first piece in the 6-week plan. Then we're going to look at the LORs. So the letters of recommendation, you need to select the recommenders. You need to communicate with the recommender. So you have to make sure that they are agreeing to write a letter of recommendation, especially in this short period of time. And then you also need to identify what are some of the examples you want each recommender to speak about. This is why the letters of recommendation start slightly later than the goals, because the kind of examples and the lens through which you want those examples shared should be in line with the goal that you have for yourself. So if you have a job that is not very quantitative, but you want a job that's more quantitative, well, you may want the recommender to speak about your analytic thinking and some of the quant component, if there's any that you have experiences that you've had that may shed some light and showcasing that you are a strong candidate for business school. So your goals are always the foundation, and everything else is a layer to that, that is added to it. So for the recommenders, you want to go have the conversation. You want to identify examples, give them essentially information that they need for them to write a strong letter of recommendation in support of that. And you're going to need about essentially slightly about a week and a half or so to put this together realistically. Then we and for the letters of recommendation, you want to give them at least 4 weeks or so, or at least 3, but ideally more than that, of time for them to actually do the writing. They are very busy people, and they are doing you a favor. They want to help support you, but make sure that you help them put together also a strong letter of recommendation by giving them time to actually work that letter into their schedule and whatever that schedule looks like. And of course, taking into account that we have holidays coming up right before the due dates for round 2. Then you also want to do school research. For about essentially about 3 weeks or so, you are going to have conversations with current students and alumni. So for each school that you are applying to, you want to have at least 3, but around 5 on average calls with different members of the student body that will help you understand what the school offers, what opportunities are there, and what are they going to be, what are some of the opportunities you can take advantage of in relation to your goals. Again, you see the goals are such an important piece in this entire process. You want to also have about 2 to 3 conversations with alumni that have graduated between 2 to 5 years ago from the target institution. And you are going to then again, ask them about their experiences and how did the school prepare them for what came later in their career. So if you're applying to more than one school, you can see that this is a lot of conversations, and you need time. Reaching out to those prospective, current student, not prospective current student, but current students or alumni of the target institution, they will need time to respond to you, to coordinate the schedule. So definitely make sure that you allot that time into your entire schedule as well. And if you're applying to more than one school, you will see how many of these calls you have to be able to convey strongly why you want to attend that given school that you have chosen to apply to. Then from there, we're going to move into the resume. So most of you already have a foundational resume, meaning you have a job resume, but of course the MBA resume needs to change. The job resume, the assumption is always that the reader is going to have an understanding of your experiences, your industry, knows the gist of the kind of experiences that you have, so the conversation is always a little bit easier. Whereas the MBA resume, the assumption is that the reader doesn't really know your industry, doesn't know your experiences. You really want to be able to share content around what you bring to the table. So the resume is going to have a job description that is going to capture the macro level areas of your responsibilities. That means if you lead someone, if you work with cross-disciplinary teams, or if you work cross-functionally with other teams, you want to be able to capture that. If you have a budget that you're in charge of or managing, you want to also include that in your job description. If you've had promotions, or if you rank a certain way in your or highly in your cohort, then definitely you want to include that in the job description as well. So that gives them a sense of where you stand in your department. Then from there, you're going to have essentially 2 to 3 bullets that are going to speak about what experiences you have had, and you shouldn't have really a litany of experiences in your MBA resume. 2 to 3 examples are plenty that speak about your most impressive achievements that you've had at that organization. And for each of those bullet points, you're going to your write-up is going to essentially answer 3 questions. So you're going to write, what did you do, or response to what did you do? What are the steps that you took to get it done? And then what is the result? With that as the foundation of the questions you should be answering in the response, should give you a really great starting point. And of course, then there's the process of editing. And for that reason, you have a few weeks of a resume development that is really required for you to put together that strong MBA ready resume. We have a few videos online about how to work on the resume. So if you go to Sia's YouTube channel, you will be able to find, I've did a few lives there that will get you to dive a little bit deeper into the MBA resume. So I don't want to take a lot of time on that here. So once you have the resume, then we're going to start, or in tandem, while you're working through this, you're also going to want to start writing those essays. And if you see on the screen, the school communication and the resume start, you're going to have a few calls, but then you're going to really start working on your essays. And the reason why you want to do that in conjunction with the communication with the schools is that you will see what information you were missing in understanding about what sets the school apart, so you can go and ask those questions again. So if you were taking the Wharton essay, which is, how is Wharton going to help you? How's the Wharton MBA going to help you get to your goals? You're going to literally have to write specific examples that are in alignment with the goal that you are trying to go towards, or the plan, or the aspirations that you have, and say specific details as to how Wharton is going to help you get there. But you are not a student. You can, if you don't do research, you are only going to rely on the internet, what the school has on the website. Having conversations allows you to give more color and allows you to write an essay with conviction that you really have imagined yourself being a student at that institution that you're targeting. So the communication and the conversation are crucial to helping you write that essay in a very compelling way. And here, as you can see, you're going to have about 4 weeks of writing. Again, this is very intense timeline as far as writing is concerned. I just want to go back to the essay 1 second. So for the essay, few things that I want to make sure that you do in this time to really maximize this 4-week period of time. So first, I suggest that you open an Excel spreadsheet and write the school name and each of the questions of the essays that the school asks of you to complete. Right next to the question, you're going to identify what examples you're going to be using to answer that question. Then zoom out to be able to see what is the pattern of communication that you are presenting to the school. So for example, Wharton's contribution essay, if your example in there does not indicate that you work well in a team, you may be missing out on opportunity. So it's always good to kind of start from a macro level lens of what you're really trying to communicate and then diving deeper. Once you are satisfied with the examples that you've selected, then start preparing an outline. Now, my mentor used to tell me to write outlines, and I would always get really frustrated because I was really ready to get started with my writing. But then I realized that actually by writing an outline, I may be starting slower, but I will get to my end result of what I'm trying to get to much faster. So I do encourage you as well to write an outline. What are the points that you want to make for each of the paragraphs? Once you look at it again from a bird's eye view, does it capture what you're trying to respond to? Then start the writing. It will make the writing that much more easy, and it will be much quicker as far as like getting to the end result. So now let's go to the application portal. As I mentioned earlier, the application portal has many questions, and you want to leave at least the last 2 weeks to start working on that. So it's not just entering data of your like date of birth and address and marital status and those types of details. Of course, that typically doesn't take a lot of time, but there's the additional questions that will take a lot of time. So you really want to start getting working through those pieces. Typically, you should focus on having one application ready first, application portal content ready first, because most of the schools have similar questions. Although some of the questions have maybe fewer character or word limitations, so you'll have to make adjustments. But if you have one solid document first that answers all the questions, then it's a matter of copy and pasting to the other. So it makes that process a little bit quicker as well. And as you can see, it doesn't wait until the sort of like the timeline. It's close to the liftoff day, but not until the day of the application, because the day of the application or the couple of days before that, what you want to do, actually a week before that, you want to focus on reaching out to the recommenders rather, make sure that they're on target to submit the application by deadline. So a week before, mark your calendars, reach out to the recommender and see where they are in the process, what additional information you can provide to them so that they are actually delivering their piece of the writing on time. And then, of course, as you're working through these pieces, you're going to do the final review. You want to be able to set your application for one school aside, or for each school aside, for at least one day, ideally a couple of days, but at least one day. You have to step away from it. And the reason why it's such an important component to step away from is because when you're working on one thing for too long, and I'm sure you've noticed this in your job, you have a tendency, or the collective you have a tendency to miss the errors. miss the things that you should be saying because you are so invested in it. You have to step back, do something else, do something different, and then come back and evaluate objectively what you have written. So if you review your entire applications a couple of days before the final due date or the application due date, you have an opportunity to make corrections. You should not be writing your application until the day of or the hour of, especially, to make sure that you're not writing something that you're going to read later on and realize you made so many errors because it was so rushed. Some people have a tendency of working really well under pressure, which is great, but typically nuances and details are missed, even with those individuals who are working under who like working under pressure. So definitely keep that in mind as you prepare. So I believe that brings us to our to the end of the presentation. So we can go into the Q&A at the moment. So there's a question on the screen that asks, how is the work experience of not the very successful entrepreneurial stint evaluated, especially compared to regular consulting work experience? What's the best way to present it? Of course, as you know, as we know, many entrepreneurial ventures are started, and not many see the successes that they hoped to get to later on. I think you want to look at that experience objectively, talk about the successes you've had, but you also want to own the failures. And by owning the failures is not to say that you are going to sort of wallow in those failures, but rather own the failures from the sense of you have learned from that experience and what those lessons have been and how those lessons inform you, inform your application moving forward. So that's a way that you can speak about your entrepreneurial venture that was not successful. And of course, try not to compare. Consultants have different experiences, different exposures, and you as an entrepreneur have different experiences and exposures, and the work is going to be very, very different. So focus on shining a light on your strengths. That is really, really important. And failures are actually great because you only learn through failures. If everything goes the way you want it to, what lessons are you going to be learning? How valuable is international work experience? I have a potential internal offer that will take me overseas, but with the catch that I might have to spend a year longer with the firm. International experience is very much valued. A lot of the schools are looking to expand their international, student body. And again, if you're applying to European schools, for example, 90+% of the class is made up of internationals. So working internationally actually is a great value to business school because it allows you to see how business is conducted in another part of the world that is typically different from your own geography. So it gives you a new lens and a new perspective, and of course, it will add more color to your application. So depending a little bit on where you're looking to go long term and what's your timeline as far as applying to business school, this offer sounds really great. And of course, it's a promotion. Definitely, it's a great offer. Okay, how can I guide my supervisor as to what he should include in the recommendation letter specifically? I understand that recruiters are assessing one's leadership capabilities. Absolutely. So if we go back to those GMAT questions, so there are two questions, one of which is how do you compare to other well-qualified individuals? And in that comparison, the recommender is asked to write your principal strengths. So what are some of the strengths that you exude? Of course, you want to showcase leadership, you want to showcase teamwork, you want to showcase vision, especially if you want to have a very, entrepreneurial sort of lens to where you're going, or perhaps strategic if strategy is something that you are interested in. So I mentioned earlier, goals are such fundamental to this process as well. But teamwork and leadership are basics of business school. So your recommender should be speaking to those there. As far as what they should include, they have to include examples. And choosing your recommender is such an important piece. Where have they seen you do that? So you have to identify a specific case. Please don't talk in generalities in the letters of recommendation. It doesn't really help your candidacy. They are looking for specific detail. So you have to talk about a specific project you worked on, a specific case that you were working on, that you exuded those characteristics. And the second question is, have you given the describe a time you've given a candidate feedback? What was the circumstance and what was their response? I am paraphrasing here because I didn't memorize the actual questions. So here you're going to want to include a specific example where the recommender has given you specific feedback about how you should be doing something different, better. This should probably be an example you've used early on in your work at the firm, or early on in your work with the supervisor, so that you can then use a second example to show them how you have grown from that, how you develop from that feedback that they have initially given you. So if you, for example, had made a mistake in a presentation, or perhaps your presentation are lengthy and unstructured initially. So your recommender would have given you feedback to create a structure, put together an outline, and present with the audience in mind. So of course, the response there is that you took the feedback with grace, and you actually implemented the changes that the recommender asked you to make. But it's not about just doing it for this one project. It's about how that one project influences you, and how that feedback influences your other work. So the recommender then would use another example of how you have made an amazing presentation that supported some other project that you worked on. So there you would have two examples that you are including in the feedback piece. Hopefully that answers. Okay, so do business school look for big company names in the resume? I have 8 years of experience, worked for 3 companies, but they are all small businesses, but a lot of learning and very rewarding. Of course, brand matters. There's a reason why people are interested in working at McKinsey and Deloitte and these big international consulting firms, for example, because it makes them much more marketable post-MBA. However, you do not need to work for a big company, a big name organization to be able to be admitted into an MBA program. What is important is that you really show the growth. So if you have the very rewarding experiences at the 3 small companies you worked at, make sure you spend the time to actually talk about what those lessons have been and how those lessons have enriched your experiences, that you would be able to contribute a lot to the classroom, and it also will make you marketable for post MBA. At the end of the day, the business schools are businesses, and they're looking to make sure that the people they admit into their program are going to be able to find a job afterwards. So focus a lot on what your goals are, transferable skills that you can bring to the table, but then also making sure that you are presenting the experiences in the lens of also thinking about that future employer as well. Yeah, so the importance of school communication. So when it comes to business school applications, yield is, of course, very important. So when you interview, even before you get to the interview, they want to know that you have done your due diligence. They want to know that you haven't applied to Harvard just because it's Harvard. That you haven't applied to Wharton just because it's Wharton. You have really done your work, and you understand why you want to go to that particular school. Schools, of course, have marketing websites, right, that is showing about all the different things that they're engaged in, which can be enticing, but it's never going to give you enough details. And of course, you are a prospective student, so in some cases, you're not even able to go on campus to visit the school, let alone, know how that experience is going to be like. So the school is asking you to tell them how you're going to take advantage of the program. without you knowing what the program really is going to offer. So the way to mitigate that is for you to have conversations with current students and alumni. And they're able to say, for example, if you're interested in participating in the Net Impact Club, for example, you have conversations with those leaders to talk about what the club does, what are some of the initiatives they're working on, what opportunities do students have or members have, and then you have to essentially extrapolate what value would that experience have in your professional development to help you get to where you want to go long term. You can only know that if you hear firsthand accounts, and that's where the students would come into play. The alumni are going to be able to tell you, yeah, business school is all well and good. There's a lot of learning, but there's also sometimes a lot of partying. How was all this experience? How was this huge investment, capital investment, and time investment worth it after you leave the program? So the alumni are able to tell you, these courses, these professors, these experiences have been instrumental to my professional development that I still currently use in my current job, or have helped me gotten a promotion, or whatever that communication looks like. So it really gives you an opportunity to understand, to hear about firsthand accounts that you will then talk about in your application. You're not telling their story, but you're saying how their story resonates with you, and you look to emulate in your experience at Wharton or Booth or Kellogg or whatever that school looks like. Okay, is having a gap year hurt your application? How to go about explaining it? The gap year is a red flag for business schools because it's going to be a red flag for future employers. Why did you leave that job that you had? So first off, you have to explain why did you leave, what happened that led to a 1-year gap. But beyond that, you have to also go into and talk about what did you do in that 1-year gap to make sure that you get to the next job. So did you network? Did you take classes? Did you read a lot? What were the activities that you have taken in that 1 year? Because 1 year is a long time. And explain how that helped you get to the next opportunity that you got later on. So it's not just about explaining it, but it's also about talking about experiences that or opportunities that you have taken advantage of to get to the next opportunity. Wonderful. So I think we are all out of questions. Oh, this is perfect timing. And I thank you all for being here. If you want to have a conversation with me, if you want to discuss your case in more detail, I'm definitely happy to have those discussions. There's a free consultation that I offer. The link to that page is on the screen as well as in the chat.